All right. Well, hi. Thank you for
Hi,
talking to me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed season two. So I guess to start off, can you just sort of tell, to tease fans, what can they expect this season?
so I think we want to surprise people and we want to stay ahead of people. We use like season one was The Shining as kind of a template, and season two we go into a different movie that doesn't really reveal itself really until the back half of it. And I think that we're going to see more of the characters, more of the family, and have their own stories. I always say that season two is really kind of the easiest season to write because season one, you kind of set up the characters, and season two, you kind of now that you know them, we can go. And we don't give you any time to rest in this. And I love scaring people, but I also, want to make people cry, and I want people to invest in this. I think people are going to be surprised, and I think people will be. If you think you know where it's going, you don't. Because by the way, I didn't. When we came up with the ending, I was like, oh my god, can we do that? And then
Was it what you expected, huh?
no.
That the other thing I was going to say is, can you sort of talk about bringing in that balance of the horror and the drama and the comedy? Because obviously it's a lot of different things.
So that was the initial conversation I had with Sharon Horgan when we started talking about this 5 years ago. Was she said to me, she said, "Do you think you can do something that horror and comedy could coexist?" She said, because a lot of times you'll get like a campy film like Scary Movie that's funny, maybe not scary, or you'll get a scary movie that tries to be funny, it's not. And I said yes, just because I just thought, I was like, well, whenever you're really, believe it or not, like the movie that I thought that we could do this in and didn't have any comedy in it was Hereditary, because I thought, like, imagine Hereditary, which was one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, had laughs in it. The laughs would be gigantic because it's so tense. So it was just a matter of creating tension, because comedy and horror are really the same thing. You're just dashing expectations. One, you do it with a joke, one, you do it with a scare. What I learned from my horror writers is that in horror, you go after the highest common denominator, where that's not always the case in comedy, because you want to surprise you want to surprise your most skeptical audience, and the one who thinks they know everything. And horror fans do know a lot, man. They know, every horror thing, every genre thing I've been to, they will ask you questions and they will go deep, 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 and they know it, and they know what to expect, and they get really, really invested. So, it's very, very difficult. Almost every first cut I get of the show, I want to slowly walk into the ocean until the last bubble appears from my nose. Because I'm like, well, this is it. We didn't get it in this one. And then slowly but surely we get it back, because it is, if it goes one way, I don't want to do camp. It can't be camp, because that's not what it is. And it's easy to do. I love character-based comedy anyway. And sometimes we go for a joke that's a little bit cheap. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a comedy writer, but like for me, the most important thing is the drama of it and the family and knowing what they want. And you really get that with these actors. And the first day of shooting, Greg Kinnear said to me, "So how do we play this? Do we play this like we know we're in a haunted house?" I said, "No, you play this like it's real. You're a real family. These are the stakes of your family." He said, "You never let anybody know you're in a haunted house. You don't believe that you're in a haunted house. You just play the stakes." And I try to write what I know from a dramatic place, and then jokes are easy, and I think scares are easy also, because it's about dashing expectations. But it was always about the psychological thrill of it, and also when you have these actors who just are so committed to the characters and to each other and to the part, and it's very intense, but it's very, very fun. But it's the
Yeah.
tone is everything. It's from I will tell you this, that everybody, my wife reminds me of this, my director reminds me of this, my producers remind me of this, that every cut, I think it's over. I think it's over. It's like we broke it. We're done. I lost it. I lost the muse. It's done. It can't be done. There's no show here. Throw it all out. And I'm like, wait a minute. What if we do this? And then we're back. So
Yeah, it works. I was gonna say, because I laughed a lot and I also jumped quite a few times too.
yeah.
So
And I'm also like, what
it's
scares me?
always
Like,
fun.
what would scare me, and what would,
That makes sense. So can you talk a bit about how the kids are affected by everything that's happened, leading up to this? Because obviously, I mean, the majority of what's happened has happened to the two adults, but it's really kind of affected them, especially Gaynor.
So I love the kids in the show. You know, one thing, you know, when when Sharon and I first started talking about the show, it was a lot about, you know, Sharon writes, you know, very women-centric stories and broken characters, and I love writing about broken characters, but I really, for me, I needed there to be a heart here, and I needed to be a family show. And you know, every show I have, there's always like an actor that I'm like, oh, I really want to test that actor and see what the sky is and the ceiling is, and I think Gus Burney is just so that we just have not even begun to tap into her talent. And it's so funny because she is, of all the characters, she's just the least like that character. She's the sweetest, gosh, gee, you know, golly gee character, and she's embarrassed by like what her character is. Always weird because I talk about Gaynor. I was like, wow, Gaynor, you're a real thing. And she's like, oh my God, Gaynor. And like, I'm like, oh, you're not Gaynor. And it was just so weird because it's like you play Gaynor, but she's not. Like all the characters refer to their characters, the actors refer to their characters. So, but for me, for there to be real stakes in this, it's like I grew up in a broken home and I have a sister. And you know, you could focus on the parents and the fighting, but the real trauma. And I also wanted to do like a generational trauma thing again. I always say like I'm very blessed with a long line of mental health issues, and my kids are going to be writers too, as much as I try to avoid that, just because there is genetic stuff.
Right.
And there's all, not only genetic stuff, there's also like it's nature versus nurture. Really, really in the coming season, also we really investigate that, like where it comes from. Where's this trauma? But for me, it's like the trauma affected me as a grown-up because of what I experienced as a kid.
Right.
So that to me is interesting. Also, like when you know, Sharon had this first soundbite of you know, that women are more than twice as likely to be possessed and depressed, and the symptoms are the same. So I did a deep dive in research, and I said, oh, the symptoms are also the same for adolescents. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, let me, and it's also another character of people, and I don't want to go into because it's a huge spoiler for season 2, of people who are, it's like it's hormones is a lot. So if you want to write everything off as just like hormones, you can do that. And adolescents are, you know, I have 2 adolescent kids and I know it. And I remember being an adolescent, and to me that's such an interesting time that the kids don't, a lot of times it gets plumbed in a really like kind of superficial way, but I really wanted to see, and also these actors are able to handle it. And so I love it. I love writing for the kids.
I was going to say, I like how you continue. I didn't expect it, I guess, quite as much this season, but that you still really, through all of it, are not given an outright answer. Like, is it ghosts? Is it all in their head? Is it mental health? I mean, it still could go kind of either way. Do you intend that to, I mean, it seems like the longer it goes on, there's sort of more things that are maybe make you think that maybe it's not, but are you going to continue that? Like, if, you know, if there's another season, is that the plan?
I hope to. Yeah, that was always kind of the plan, is that you could look back in both ways. There's always an excuse, you know, and that's why that was the fun this year of bringing you know, Mira back. Last year we did a panel last year, and somebody asked Greg what it was like to work with Mira, and Mira was like to work with Greg, and they both said, I don't know, we've never been in the scene together. I was like, is that true? It's like, holy shit, that's true. I was like, I got to figure out a way to get Mira in the scene. So that's a challenge with him. But we don't want we don't want Terry to be able to see him because that's Pat's mental illness. So then you know, you saw this season, we thought of a way to kind of give her flesh. So I will hope that that's just one of the balancing acts we have to do, that it can always be seen as mental illness. And thankfully, there's so many disorders that really have, you know, dissociative disorders and psychoses that make you believe what you're seeing, that I think we can get away with it. And, you know, and Jake also has kind of some powers too. we talked about Jake being, without officially saying it, somewhere on the spectrum, and sometimes those kids have kind of a more of an openness
Right.
to those type of supernatural things, or it's just mental illness.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like that it works out either way because it keeps you guessing.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jamie.
And I did enjoy season 2. So hopefully there'll be more. Find out what
Oh
happens.
boy, oh boy, we're sure counting on it. Thank you.